On Government Order of the Day number 6.
Geographical Indications Wine and Spirits Registration Amendment Bill interrupted debate on second reading.
Members, when we were last debating the second reading of the Geographical Indications Wines and Spirits Registration Amendment Bill, Stuart Smith had the call and has 7 minutes remaining should he wish. Are there any further speakers? The question then is that I call the Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I understand Mr. Smith's away, so I know it's a bit early in the morning to be talking about wine, but I'm sure there'll be a few members in the House might still have some memories of it. Mr. Speaker, can I just say that this is a very important bill, and it moves into effect what was passed in 2006. And since 2006, 10 years ago, a lot has happened in New Zealand across the agribusiness sector. A lot has happened in the wine industry. And clearly there's a greater appreciation of the need to protect the intellectual property and the brands that we have built up and are now so very proud of. And this bill will give protection to Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, to Central Otago Pinot Noir, and will ensure that what we say is in the bottle indeed comes from the area to which the label refers, Mr. Speaker. And in 2006, with the best of intents, for the general purpose being the same, there was the possibility that wine from overseas could have come in up to 15%. By volume of any bottle. It could have come in from overseas, and that could have arguably tainted the integrity of the brand for something like Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. That door has now been closed, and in fact anyone who purchases a bottle of Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc will know that 85% comes from Marlborough and possibly 15% from somewhere else in New Zealand. But clearly we've moved, and those who are smart will actually have all their wine from Marlborough if they call it Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. Mr. Speaker, what the opposition, while supporting the bill, is concerned about is perhaps the lost opportunity. And we heard time after time in select committee from submitters and officials that it is absolutely essential that consumers know where the grapes were grown and where the wine comes from, because it's about the integrity of the product. But the government refuses to move on the area of country of origin labelling, that is, identifying where food comes from across the rest of the consumer market. What absolute hypocrisy that we could have, Mr. Speaker, officials coming and saying such strong things about alcohol, where arguably there's the least risk, I have to say, from a food safety perspective, and refusing to acknowledge that country of origin labelling is rightfully, it should rightfully be imposed for consumers of other than alcohol. But anyway, moving right on from that, where the government will find it has some trouble is that if it wants to make any progress in an EU trade deal, then we've been told very clearly that unless we have geographical indicators for food, and unless we implement country of origin labelling, which is actually an overarching umbrella for geographical indicators, Mr. Speaker, we're not going to have any trade deal. And that's the reality. So the government has missed the opportunity through this piece of legislation to actually move us ahead, be in a better position to take up any offer of a trade deal with the EU. And so we're going to be back in the House with another geographical indicators piece of legislation that refers to food. I don't mind that. I think it's the smartest thing that we could do, but once again the government misses the opportunity. My personal view is that I represent an amazing electorate called West Coast Tasman. Two distinct geographical areas, three really, but two that are well known. The West Coast, bounded by the Southern Alps, and Golden Bay. Two areas that, in my view, should have geographical indicator protection for the products that we produce. Seafood, dairy, beef products. Both of those areas, in my view, should over time aim to have an international reputation for fine quality and safe food. But it's a brand that they have to firstly realise the value of and then work to develop. And then, hopefully, a visionary government, a Labor-led government, will come with a geographical indicators legislation, a piece of legislation that will ensure, and in fact, the Rangatiki, where the chairman of the select committee comes from, they might even have some value in developing a brand. I mean, he tells me it's a nice area up there, that maybe there's some value in having a geographical indicator, provenance, appellation. There are a number of terms for it, Mr. Speaker, but what it says is that the product that we are selling to the consumer comes from an area, a distinct area, and there are some qualities unique to that that are worth paying a bit more for, because that's what we're about here. It's about value added. And I say to this House and to the members of the Select Committee, the government members who missed the opportunity to move in this area, that we need geographical indicator legislation for the food and for regions like Golden Bay and for the West Coast, where innovative producers of fine products can build a brand and sell to the rest of the world and tell a story about their magnificent region and why the qualities of their produce is different from that of somewhere else in the world. And indeed, unless we accept and embrace that and promote that, New Zealand doesn't have a good future. Mr. Speaker, last night I was at Landcorp where they were promoting Pamu as a brand. Relates to their operation, their systems of production, but it depends upon, of course, the provenance of New Zealand Inc., that of our country. But I think as they move down the path to, I guess, higher value and more brand distinction, they'll be looking to identify perhaps the meat from the Mackenzie country or the wool from Mackenzie country, as Icebreaker does. Mr. Speaker, this is an amazing area of opportunity for New Zealand as a primary producing country. And the passage of this legislation is needed, or it's effectively an update on a 2006 piece of legislation, because there's a lot of passion about wine. It must be something related to the passion to drink it. But there's a passion about wine and the need to protect it and how well it's done in the international market. And I have to acknowledge the wonderful growth in exports. But so too, in other areas of primary production, we should be using the same wisdom. And it may seem repetitive, but unless we get that message through, not just to the company executives, but all the way down through the traders and the stock agents and the farmers themselves, Mr. Speaker, we're not going to get a realisation of the underlying value that we have in this country for amazing production of quality, for the most part pasture-fed protein and fibre to the rest of the world. And we miss the opportunities every single day because the government sits on its hands and doesn't facilitate the growth of that branding and the growth of collaboration across the primary sectors. I've said to the Minister and I've said to members of the Select Committee, we must move faster. Ireland has developed Origin Green. MPI and the Minister's woken up to it 5 years down the track. And they're now just trying to discover why the Irish are making such good progress. They realise that their country has some unique attributes and they're going out and building on those. This piece of legislation says that for wine only, we've got some wonderful attributes: Martinborough, Marlborough, Central Otago, and there'll be other areas like Waipara as well. And as they build a distinct brand and a distinct taste profiles for their products, they need to have protection through legislation that no one else in the world can sell a product using those terms. There will still be, as we've pointed out here, the risk that they might sell, this is in the style of Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, but it's not Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. So our challenge now, and for those people, is to get out and market to the consumer the importance of reading the label carefully and knowing that this is Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, not in the style of. Mr. Speaker, I think the Select Committee's done a good job to tidy this up, but the government has missed the opportunity to ensure that country of origin labelling and geographical indicators, that is appellation, provenance, is legislated for the whole of our primary food producing sector.